Hello and welcome back to the CFC Talk podcast. And this is take two after a long stream with Ankit today on his channel. And make sure that you're subscribed on his channel. He's joining me today to discuss Chelsea in terms of the last game against West Ham, and then hopefully the first game of the Champions League. The Champions League season kicks off this week, so obviously every Chelsea fan is excited. The transfer window is finally closed, so it's now time to just focus on football and Tuchel. As he says, I enjoy coaching, and for the last 3 days he's been doing that, and which is why he thinks the West Ham result was a very good result. But Ankit, welcome back to the channel. I'll be very careful when I say your name now before I mess it up again. But welcome back to the channel. How are you doing? I know we're both coming off, by the way, we're both coming off an extravagant cricket match of India Pakistan, so emotions are high from that. Maybe use some of that in describing Chelsea's performance on West Ham.
Well, I hope not, because otherwise it's going to be really just emotional, kind of assessment. Honestly speaking, I take a win. I take a win the way things are going, the way things have been going for the quite a few time, as in quite a few weeks. I would say, like, yes, definitely we have been in a transition. Last time we spoke, I remember we discussed about transfers, how the transfers will kind of be shaped, and whether those transfers are going to help us enough to kind of get what we are, seeking to in this season. But honestly, at this point in time, it has already, I know it's very early on in the season, but that's how the season has been already. That this is going to be another close season, another one where we actually fight for that, second, third, fourth, fifth spot. And I'm just being realistic there. Obviously, I want us to win the league, but again, just being realistic probably doesn't seem like it. So that is why I would say that the fact that we have been drawing games that we should win and losing games that probably we should be drawing, I take a 3-point result, and especially if it comes over a London rival, and in the way that it has with drama, any kind of drama which happens where you are on the winning side, actually kind of elevates your morale as a team, and that's what probably will my main takeaway from this match is.
No, I think we're right in saying this weekend for Chelsea in terms of results was a perfect weekend. Arsenal have just lost points. Although yes, Man United have won their game, but again, we're not far off from Man United. But Man City dropped points, Liverpool dropped points, so the big teams have dropped points, and Chelsea have come up with a win. A lot of controversy in the match, and it goes without saying, Chelsea games do tend to have quite a lot of controversy. There's some news about this decision that we're going to speak about in the podcast being reviewed by a special panel which handles the VAR and the Refereeing Association of the Premier League. So let's see what happens in that. But going back into the game, firstly, just thinking about overall, what are your quick thoughts? And as you said, you take the 3 points, but again, your quick thoughts and maybe a standout performance for someone that you might have seen on that day.
Okay. Actually, we've got to be basically very critical of the way that we have approached certain games, and again, this was one of them. Yes, we have been leaking goals, which is so unlike Chelsea of the last few years, in fact. But and that's a fact. Like maybe Tuchel, and he said it when he joined Chelsea as well. He said it like, we want to be a team that no one wants to play against. We want to be that hard. And of course, recently he said that we've been very soft, and maybe that is why he had gone in with that extra kind of protection. With he kind of played a 5-man midfield in front of the 3-man defense, right? Of course, getting Fofana helps, but the fact that now Aspi, for instance, isn't playing right center back, so Aspi is someone who kind of overlaps, Reece James and vice versa at times, and that with Fofana, I don't see much of it happening. So it makes the backline very solid, but at the same time, that should give our midfield more kind of just a license to move forward a little bit more. But again, maybe I'm guessing that the Jorginho not being picked factor played into it, that they weren't sure if Loftus-Cheek was sitting back, or Loftus-Cheek, Kovacic, and Gallagher being there. I think there was way too much sideways passing that was happening the entire first 1 hour, I would say. Maybe also the fact that Koulibaly was recently back, Gallagher himself was recently back after the suspension, and the fact that it was a derby, we were a little bit more pragmatic than what we should have been. But again, that person who kind of passes with Kovacic coming back from an injury as well, we didn't have that in the first half, and it was way too pedestrian, in my opinion, right? Of course, the thing which changed is the substitutions, and I'm happy about that. That finally Thomas Tuchel did not wait for that like 78th minute, but he actually made the substitutions like closer to an hour mark. Arguably, or rather not even arguably, I would actually have started Broya anyway. So Broya came on, he changed Chilwell. Like I've been saying that on my channel a lot of times, and I've got a lot of stick for it. I have to tell you that when we play wing back system, right? For me, and I'll stick my hideout even now. As a wing back, basically for me, the way okay, your power is gone. You might have to edit this part, bro. It'll
No,
come back. Don't worry.
no worries.
I
Yeah,
have backup.
yeah.
You know what I've been saying? It's been raining, right? Cats and dogs.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I
early.
really, guys who are watching this, I just want to give a quick shout out to Ankit for jumping on. By the way, it's like 12 in the morning, 12:30 in the morning for you, and
Yeah,
he's
it's just
just
early
come off a
morning.
4 or 5 hour stream, and he's got something planned for tomorrow as well. And so, Ankit, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. Having you on this, and if you guys want, check him out on his channels. Also, I want to say, check out the cricket podcast we're gonna do tomorrow. Hopefully, we're gonna record and the reason I say that is because it's going to be full of emotions. India, Pakistan, obviously that's going to be an interesting one. But to carry on what Ankit's been saying, and I agree with you on that. We didn't look very confident, I would say, right at the start, and not sure exactly why or whose fault that was. And with Kovacic getting that early yellow card, I was like, yeah, don't let this be another one of those performances where we're going to have struggling midfield again. We saw that in for some time, but overall, as you said, Broya should have started. It was clear for me. Broya had done a lot more against Southampton than any other of our attacking players, and Broya was the man that I was looking for in the start. And in that terms, I'm a bit frustrated with Tuchel, because he says one thing in press conference and he says that he's still trying out things. He's frustrated himself with a few situations that are in the team right now in the playing 11, but then we don't see those reflections in the uh playing 11 for the next game. Broya
Yeah,
didn't come in.
and even the way we approached within the game, right? Because if you see, there was a moment where Gallagher got the ball and there was enough space in front of him, and but he again chose to kind of go back and go the entire cycle away, and Tuchel himself was frustrated. But
Yeah,
again, did he direct the players enough? And that's coming to him, because again I was talking about the Chilwell point, for example, right? As a team that has been depending so much on wing backs, right? We have been depending on wing backs for goals. I will stick out my neck and say that as a goal scorer per se, surely Chilwell is our best choice at left wing back. So if we are going back for 100%, Kukurea, takes the spot. And not that Kukurea is bad. Again, don't get me wrong, people watching. But in terms of the goal scoring ability, I don't think we have enough in a forward line, especially when we, like Tuchel has played two up front. And again, Pulisic, like again, I used to be a Pulisic fan. Not that I am not still, but I used to be a huge one at that. What I will say is in Pulisic's defenses, only thing is yes, he is not been the player that he was maybe during peak lockdown, but last year or so, for whatever reason, Tuchel still believes he's the same Pulisic from Dortmund days, which used to be like he used to play on the right wing more, or basically he used to basically kind of play the second striker. Now right now, best position that Pulisic plays is left wing, and he cannot be a co-striker, especially when you know that finishing is not the confidence level that he probably wants right now. So you had to play Broya, you're right, and maybe play Pulisic beside him. And yes, the only way to go about it is maybe not have Gallagher and play Chilwell, who can kind of support that left hand side along with him. But having said that, I think eventually those substitutions did play into it, and I think they really worked well. Of course, there was a lot of argument about Antonio scoring after that second yellow, which probably should have been, which wasn't. After I know Thiago Silva has posted saying that, oh come on, he was just giving me a hug, but we all know that was a pun from Thiago
yeah,
Silva, and that's something that of course maybe 90% of the media will miss. But the fact is that we either way should have defended. We were not defending very well, and that makes all the more reason why we need to have more forwards to score more goals. Uh, but yeah, as in just without beating around the bush, let me tell you that yes, Broya made a difference. And the moment that Broya came, Chilwell came. I know that the one pass and the spinner from Chilwell, that was absolutely fantastic. The nutmeg, but in my opinion, it was Broya. I think before that there were a couple of balls played onto Broya from again the right hand side. And if not for Fabianski, probably Broya and Zuma as well, Broya probably would have got a goal there, right? And that made them kind of weary, and that is why what Broya was doing is he was occupying Zuma, and that is why Chilwell got the space that he did, and he could do that. Same thing with Havertz. Havertz got that space later on, and Chilwell could have cut it back, and obviously Havertz took it very well. So overall, again, I am disappointed by the way we go. We are more reactive than proactive, which is what I'm not liking, despite what Tuchel has been saying. But I'm glad that eventually maybe Tuchel, rather than waiting for 75 minutes, understood that within our mark and made those changes. and those were effective. So this will increase the confidence of both Broya and Havertz, and of course Chilwell, who's been actually ironically been doing well the time he's been coming on for Chelsea this season.
Firstly, with like the whole defensive situation, we are struggling. There is no sugarcoating it. There is no hiding what's happening at Chelsea right now in terms of defensively. And on paper, we're the perfect defense in the league. I would go as far as to say we're the perfect defense in the league. You've got someone as experienced as Thiago Silva, someone very experienced in Koulibaly, who's done amazing things for his national team as well as in the Serie A. And then you've got a youngster like Fofana, who's also there. You've just brought in Cucurella, you've got Ben Chilwell, Reece James, who's regarded as one of the best right wing backs in the league and maybe even in the world. And for me, when you put these statements out there, you see that on the paper and you go, this team is still conceding goals, and especially with Mendy in goal as well, who is pretty tall. He's got he's a well-built keeper who's agile. So it is concerning for me, which is why I was in the after that goal went in, I was like, yeah, this is time where we might want to rest Mendy and we might want to go with Kepa for the Champions League game. I know we're going to get into that, but the defensive issues that we're having is a major issue because it's, we can score 5 goals in a game, but if we're conceding 5 goals in a game, then it's no point. We've conceded so many goals this season already, and the stats that have been coming out after that Southampton loss, we saw that the amount of goals we've conceded in just 4 or 5 games is the same amount of games we conceded in almost the last 20 games of last season or so, or it was a huge number. But 9 goals conceded in 6 is an unacceptable stat for a team who has spent so much in defense. So defensively, we've got to really figure out what's happening. Maybe it's the Kante thing where we don't have someone sitting right there stopping counterattacks and someone who can just intercept the ball like Kante does. That's a very obvious thing that Chelsea are missing, which is why I think a lot of fans were frustrated with Gilmour leaving. Gilmour leaving was a sign of saying, well, what's going on here? Maybe Zakaria changes that. Maybe he plays in a natural 6. He plays behind. He is also injury prone, but at the same time, if we can get game time out of him in this loan, I do see Chelsea having to buy him, obviously, because with Gilmour not having that buyout clause to bring him back into Chelsea when we sold him to Brighton for just 9 million, which is still a surprising figure for me. In terms of what you said about Pulisic, I think Tuchel is showing trust in him, and the reason I say that is and I think what I think is, and I say this before I heard about the Broja 5-year deal that came out. With Broja, the situation was where he wasn't getting offers from other clubs, or I guess there wasn't enough interest from other clubs to, I guess, warrant Tuchel to say anything about Broja publicly. So there wasn't anything serious. With Pulisic, there was interest. Milan were interested, but there was no interest from Chelsea selling. And publicly, there was Tuchel saying, no, he's our player, and we're going to block his transfer. And that's what Tuchel did. So Pulisic didn't go. And from that, I understood, he's got a plan with Tuchel. He's got a plan with Pulisic, and he's going to execute it. Whether he wants him to come off the bench at 60 minutes and get a goal and maybe change the game, that's his kind of tactic to go with. But Broja, up until the 5-year contract, there wasn't a lot of public appreciation for someone like Broja, and we only, as Chelsea fans, kind of thought he will stay because we don't have a lot of striking options, so we will have to kind of keep him. And after that 5-year contract, I kind of understood, okay, Broja is in Tuchel's plans, and then that Southampton performance and a few good performances warrant the fact that we need someone like Broja up there. But I know I'm going to go ahead of our discussion and go into the the final few minutes or the last change when Broja came on. We kind of when that second goal went in for Chelsea, I saw Tuchel signaling a 5-4-1 into the team, but I always saw Broja and Havertz playing next to each other. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that's something that Chelsea can maybe look at? Because both are non-ball holding or non-positional holding strikers up front. They're 2 strikers who like to run around and try and create spaces and try and find spaces.
Yeah. So you know what, Broja, the way that he played in Southampton, for instance, right? I always felt that the best that we can get out of Broya is when he actually play in two striker situation, where he actually, you're right, he probably plays that, off the striker, someone who kind of runs for those balls, the second balls, and then maybe, create the space and then kind of take a shot, rather than someone who kind of holds and then creates the space for himself, right? So I genuinely feel that is the case, but do we have that option? No, and that is maybe one reason why Tuchel probably would have guessed that. And again, the fact that if, say, for instance, if you go 5-4-1 in that situation, for instance, right? I think it probably meant that Havertz is going to play behind Broya. And what happens there is obviously when Broya is kind of, having the ball, one overlaps the other, simply put. And at any
that is
point, there will be a
Havertz's natural position, where that's where he used to play back in the German club, by
exactly, exactly. And see, that's the thing. Now, Tuchel requires a fluid system, and that's what he's probably taught. And again, that communication must have been made that basically a 5-4-1 for me means that one is not going to keep still. You're going to be,
Yep.
switching that person behind you. But on the other hand, I actually feel that Broya is at that age is probably give him one particular role and let him do that well for a while. Same with Havertz. And that's the problem. I think Havertz floats a bit too much for me. I hope Broya doesn't get into that shell. And that's the only problem, that you have to be focused on knowing what exactly you need to do, because what is happening is with that maybe confuses a Sterling. That maybe confuses a midfielder like a Gallagher who's coming into the club newly. So for them it's totally new, right? While some of our players might be knowing that. So I think that'll take even more time than what is expected. Plus, it's not that we have been scoring goals for fun, right? So if things are not working, you got to move, you got to change at some point. And that is where I'm coming to. See, you mentioned the fact that we've been leaking goals, right?
Yep.
We haven't, trust me, like, being someone who's seen the club for last 22 years, I know that how tough it is to win the league. I have the pain of that, and we haven't done that for 5 years. And I can clearly see we won the Champions League, building that firm structure in behind, right? Now that we have lost that structure, it is the best excuse for Chelsea Football Club and for Tuchel and his management to actually go four at the back, even though we concede goals. We will concede goals. It's not going to be like in day one we are going to do excellent. I know it's English Premier League. We have to take that, as in things were scuff of the neck. We have to be flexible. We have to, maintain a certain amount of gap at max to the top four at best, right? But if you are investing so much, and by so much I mean it's a record transfer ever by any club in a summer window, simple as that. So if you're doing that, then you rather use those players to their benefit. And I know that the Lukaku point will come here when we recall that did we actually play him? That's debatable. But there was an issue of the attitude. Here, when you have a Sterling, for instance, who is scoring goals in a position which is not familiar to him of late, but still he's doing that. Imagine what he can do when he's played. We spoke about Broya, right? If you have a Broya and a Sterling together, I can still buy that. But you cannot play a Sterling and a Pulisic up front. That doesn't work, simply put. Broya is at least a striker who kind of, is fluid. But Pulisic is definitely a winger who can play as a striker. We rather have Sterling play next to someone who's a natural striker first. Again, you want Sterling to run those channels. You don't want Sterling to be having that, ball front, chest it, and then down and keep, as in put it in for Havertz. No, it's the other way around which should happen, right? So that's one point. And Zakaria mentioned, right? If Zakaria, first of all, I hope he comes back soon and is fit enough to start soon. Of course, work permit. I hope it's just in time, hopefully. But
no, he's at the Chelsea training ground. The only reason is I think he wasn't in. He didn't have enough training time with the team to take part in the match, but he should be ready for the next game. And then obviously Aubameyang in the next few weeks because of his injury in the jaw.
Right. I believe he's also getting like a mask done, etc., section done. So hopefully he'll be training starting today. So, but having said that, my main concern is not that. My main concern is I hope Tuchel was just joking when he said that he could play wing back. That's Zakaria, because if after all this, and I know that it's become a joke almost, but on serious note, bro, let me tell you, and everyone.
Yeah, on the serious note, if I'm being okay, I know I'm going to interrupt you here, but on the serious note, we've had Loftus-Cheek play there, we've had Pulisic play there, we've had Callum Hudson-Odoi play there.
Yeah. Reece James played a left wing back a couple of games and he got injured once. So
at this rate, even if Tuchel jokes about it, I'll take it seriously. I'll actually sit there and think, okay, next game Zakaria is starting at left wing back or right wing back.
No, but on the other hand, just think about it, right? As in the fact you mentioned about Gilmore, we let Gilmore go.
Yeah.
Maybe Tuchel does not have that DM who plays with the ball in the mind. Because in Mönchengladbach, Zakaria actually, like I followed a lot of Bundesliga at the time, he actually played in a two midfield system, right? Yes, he's primarily a DM for Swiss national team. He plays like a DM, same for Juventus that he played, but he can play that. So I won't be surprised that the only reason why, again, he wasn't like scouted before. Remember, we were scouting for Edson Alvarez as well as Sangare, and because they were not available and it was deadline day, we went with the third option. Considering that this guy has international experience, he has a lot of strength, he has height. So Tuchel likes playing them in midfield as well. He talks a lot about Loftus-Cheek being able to play multiple positions. I think that's what he meant. So eventually, I think Zakaria will be used a lot. Now, only aspect that I'm looking forward to Zakaria, because he isn't anywhere close to a goal scorer. He's very similar to Gilmore in terms of stats of goals. So you are expecting him to basically do a defensive job, even in midfield, even whatever position he plays, whether it's a single pivot, a double pivot. And that is where hopefully we'll give, say, a Mount, a Gallagher, folks like this, even Loftus-Cheek to some extent, and of course Kovacic, to maybe go forward with those runs that they make, and have those long passes, within the ground, which is something which can bring that B game to us. Otherwise, the way things are going, Jorginho, as much as he can do that, he doesn't do that enough, and he's not suddenly going to change, overnight, right? And I like him, but we cannot have him starting week in, week out at this point in time. We need someone who just frees up those midfielders who are really number eights and not neither number 10s nor number sixes. And that's your Gallagher's, your Loftus-Cheeks, your Mounts, your Kopacic's, right? No, we want them to free up. And okay, again, they may not score a lot of goals in the career. Mount does, I know, but others, the best thing is what they can do. At least they would take shots. At least they would be basically, taking the ball forward. And a person like a Broya, we already spoke, he doesn't like to stay still. So maybe he can take him off and probably have a shot at goal. So we just need more shots in the box. Like we had like crazy amount of corners as well. Imagine. So a person like a Zakaria, for instance, will also hopefully benefit in that, winning that first ball in a corner when we are attacking as well as defending. So I think at some point in time, we need that, a safety valve kind of a thing that we used to have back in the day with Makelele. Again, I'm not comparing, but I'm just saying that in terms of the role, we need that player, and I'm hoping and praying that Tuchel uses him in that system. Aubameyang will certainly help us because someone who can kind of run the left channel as well as the up front, and that's where possibly a Havertz can be more effective because Havertz kind of plays a similar thing as well. So I think where Havertz is not really there right now, he needs someone who actually floats as much as him. What Sterling is doing right now is Sterling is super, but I don't think Sterling has probably got the way Havertz plays and vice versa. So again, it's not Sterling's fault. It's probably his Tuchel's, and here the power goes again, comes back. No problem. Anyway, yeah, that's all I have to say about the new signings, how they fit in, and of course, how we need to move forward.
No, we've got the. I think we've, like I keep saying this, and I'll probably continue to say this. Yeah, on paper, this is the perfect squad Chelsea could have, and I guess the reason we've not been consistent is because we don't have a core team yet. You look at a few players that you would have put first on those on that lineup sheet would have been Mendy, Thiago Silva, Kante, and Sterling. But now you've also got question marks next to Mendy. With Kante, he might be injured. He's struggling. With Silva, you have to be very careful with how many games you can give him and how much you have to preserve him. With Sterling, it's like he's the only one that goes into my team sheet he's the first one that goes into my team. But there is no core team at Chelsea right now. And whether that is because Mason Mount's struggling in form, whether that's because Gallagher is making mistakes off the ball, or he's getting these suspensions, maybe because Loftus-Cheek is playing out of position at right wing back in some games. Reece James was ill, maybe that. But realistically, Reece James also on my sheet. I don't know how I missed that. But realistically, we've got options, we've got backups. And what I want to see from this Chelsea team is be bold, is aggression. I don't mind a 0-0. That's what I'm saying. A lot of people think 90 minutes of football that ends in a 0-0 draw is a boring match. But if Chelsea are playing a team like Man City, where there's aggression from Chelsea, where there's Tottenham was a draw, but in no way sense was any of Chelsea fans disappointed from that performance or say, oh, we could have done better. Everyone walked out of that game saying, this is the Chelsea we want this season. This is what we want to see from Chelsea. And that was because we had Kante, we had Reece James, we had Sterling, we had all these players on the team sheet that day. So realistically, what I want from Chelsea's midfield is to go for those long balls, find those passes. How many times, as Ankit mentioned, how many times is Tuchel now saying, and he said this in the post match as well, in regards to his reaction on the back passes that Chelsea midfielders were making back into the defense. He was saying, I was unhappy with the progression of the ball. Kovacic used to do that. He's not playing all the 90 minutes, obviously, because of injury. We have to preserve him. So I guess it's a bit of injuries, as well as the fact that Chelsea players are not as bold as we would have want them to be, where they can play those long balls, where they can play those passes, which might end up in us losing our own possession, might end up in the opposition trying to counter attack. But if we've got a quality we've got the quality of defense to defend it, then do it. Then take your shot, take the chance. We did it right at the end with West Ham with Chilwell. The goal Chilwell scored, that was a long ball. Havertz was a good ball as well. That goal that we scored. So overall, we just have to be bold in terms of how we play, in general from everyone. And talking about the goalkeeper situation with Mendy now having question marks, should we rest him? Should we, Zagreb coming up tomorrow night when this episode goes live, Tuesday night we're playing. Should we rest him and give Kepa a chance? Obviously, it's not wrong to rotate when it's a different competition.
You know what? As in, there is an argument that Kepa anyway deserves a chance right now, especially the fact that we saw him coaching Havertz and Havertz scored a goal right after. But anyway, jokes apart, I think you know what, Kepa again. I won't lie. Kepa does remind me of some nightmares. I won't lie there. But Mendy is not kind of convincing for quite a few months. Like even like for instance, the Real Madrid game last season, West Ham game last season, and those are not some things that you can forget easily because those were like as in typical schoolboy goalkeeping errors, to be honest, right? But again, as in maybe I won't say drop, but maybe just giving him a rest and knowing that okay, boss, there is competition for you better, as in pull your socks up. And the fact that it's Champions League can be a welcome break. And of course, it's versus Zagreb with no disrespect. The fact that we should be winning that game and if Kepa lets in there, I think it's probably the answer that Kepa is definitely not even a plan B. So I think that's maybe the best choice. But I think coming back to your defense point, right? I think you make a great point about us being aggressive even from the defense. And that probably starts from the manager. Now, I understand that the fact that he's trying to be protective towards a Fofana and maybe even a Broya attack, right? And that is why probably he's not starting Broya and he started Fofana back three. Now, Fofana, in recent times, he has played in the back two. Yes, he has played in the back three as well, but he's played in the back two. And that is what one thing I noticed during the West Ham game. Like a lot of people, like Gallagher, for instance, he has not played with so many midfielders along in a certain match consistently. Fofana has probably not played with so many defenders along in a certain match consistently. So what happens by default is they are a little bit extra careful of what they're doing, and they are in a situation where they're not used to. And that is why you have slower passes, not like those quick passes. Rather than that, I would rather say that just go and play Gallagher's natural position, which is number 8. Fofana in the back two. Same thing with Broya, natural striker. Go with that. If you want a second man next to him, Havertz, we have. So there are options. So basically speaking, play to the player's strengths and not be extra pragmatic or extra careful. Because in not conceding a goal, what is happening is we are so predictable in every pass they're making. Yes, eventually we got that, and like you said, they started off with a long pass from Silva. And I remember just 2 games ago when Koulibaly played his last game before the red card, there was a pass that he played similarly. And I remember exactly Tuchel actually shouted at him. I was like shocked because that is exactly as a fan, not that I hate Tuchel, I love him to core, but as a fan, I love the fact that we have, after Rudiger, someone who's at least wanting to play that long pass. And if I remember right, Koulibaly also played a great pass in this game, I think, to the right wing. So those are things that they have in the locker, Silva and Koulibaly, and Jorginho from midfield. It's just that they don't do enough. James, for instance, all of them have that in the locker. I don't think they do enough, and that gives me the question: is it coming from the management to kind of just keep the ball, keep it simple, keep it passing, and we want that perfect goal? That's the thing.
I highly doubt that's coming from the management. I think Tuchel himself is getting frustrated, and it's something that I guess is because of player confidence. Is what my thing. I think that is what the situation is. Because if the player has the confidence, someone like Thiago Silva with the confidence he's been playing those long balls, and we've not seen that happen from midfield. We've not seen that from anyone else other than a few, which are Sterling, Silva, and Reece James, who have been performing really well for Chelsea. So if we consider stats and all these numbers and these numbers that all analysts talk about, we'll probably be in the bottom of that list overall, because in general we've just been playing a very unlike Tuchel football, I'd say. Unlike Tuchel football, Tuchel football that I saw at PSG, Tuchel football that I used to see at Dortmund was attacking football, even with three at the back. Remember that Conte season at Chelsea? People said it would be boring five at the back. It's unheard of. Five at the back, you do that when it's a relegation team trying to defend. It's unheard of. But then when Conte did it, it was so beautiful, and the fluidity
The
in that
Everton game
football.
comes to mind, and in
The
reality,
5-0.
all these years, it's one of the best games that Chelsea's ever played.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, because again, Louis van Gaal has publicly said that if you feel that five at the back is boring, go and watch Tuchel. So I think a person like Louis van Gaal,
Yeah.
who's again not respected as much, but I know as a matter of fact in terms of football, he probably has one of the biggest legacies that is. So if he is saying that Tuchel can play very good football, I think probably you're right. As in, it comes down to the players, and like I said, like maybe they are in that unfriendly situation on the pitch. So why not just play to their strengths, because it's not giving them confidence. So what will give them confidence is something playing to the strengths. You got to ask them. Ziyech, for example, man, entire season last season, yes, there's not been great application times, but you got to be aware of what the strengths of your players are. Like Tuchel himself admitted, when we started at Chelsea under Tuchel, he said that with this personnel, the best I see is that for them, five at the back is the best with wing back system. I understand that, but now what? Season and a half down the line, you would admit that Tuchel needs to kind of change, and this is the best excuse for him to go for the back.
I think it's Tuchel's choice to explore what he wants, but at the end of the day, I feel like a back four might fire back. The only reason I say that is Jorginho's lack of pace in midfield, and us not having a proper defensive midfielder like Kante, or a Kante like replacement for games when Kante doesn't play.
Again, the reason I'm saying this, like I said, I am ready to kind of take in goals as much as we improve in the long run. Again, Italy, I know it was a tournament football. You cannot compare a tournament football versus EPL. But still, I think the way Mancini played Jorginho in that Euros, I think there's some takeaways from that. And then I think that's what I meant. When I say we have two number eights in, say, maybe a Mount and a Gallagher, who are actually defensively very good as well. And that is where he can be protected. Kovacic or a Mount, or a Kovacic and a Gallagher is something that I think works with Jorginho. Only Gallagher there kind of backfires for both of them, and that's the only debate. But again, I hope that Zakaria solves the problem. As in, maybe Tuchel wanted that option, and that's why he went for Zakaria finally. And let's hope that he's not using the wing back.
No, I agree with you. Like, Tuchel could go with a back four and a back five, and there will be errors, or there will be issues with either of those formations, and there will always be a formation which fits certain players better than the others, and likewise in a back four and a back five. But in the end, it'll be very interesting to see how we line up against Zagreb. And the reason I say that is because maybe this is a game where Tuchel can experiment with a back four. And this will be a perfect opportunity, starting a Champions League campaign where against, I guess, a weaker team than what you'll get. And we were very lucky with the group that we've been drawn in. It's not the worst of groups. Obviously, the group of death this year has got Lukaku's Inter Milan, Bayern, and Barcelona. So lucky not to be in that group. But Milan, Salzburg, Zagreb, not the worst of groups to be in, and playing Zagreb in the opening game, just building up that confidence leading into it. But Zagreb, they've won their last few games. They've won the play. They came into the Champions League with the after the playoffs win. They're first in their league in their league, the Croatian league, by a mile, and have not lost a game this whole season. So something that they have scored 27 goals, I will say. So 27 goals in 8
I think
games.
again, I'm not sure if I exactly know the pronunciation of all the names, but I know that Zagreb, they have probably the largest contingent that they had to the Croatian team, right? So you cannot take them lightly, and of course Croatia did very brilliantly when you talk about the Euros, for instance. Having said that, I think it's an away game, so we have to be careful. But at the same time, we have like a Fofana who's not coming off like a training regime of maybe consecutive couple of weeks, and Silva again being at the age that is. So it is best excuse, and I agree with you that Tuchel, for whatever reason, he doesn't trust Chalobah as much. So, but again, the fact that we don't have so many centre backs at the club, points to me that yes, this is probably the game that probably he'll experiment and hopefully it doesn't backfire. At least again, I've seen it backfire in a couple of league games already. Don't get me wrong, we did concede and then we went back to back five. We were slightly better, but because that is the natural way that we play over the last couple of years. But that comfort zone, I want them to get out of. That's what I'm saying, And maybe this is the point that probably Tuchel should do that. But let's hope for the best. I'm definitely hoping us to get a good game. The fact that we're coming off a big victory, yes, it was at home, but still, I think Champions League, for some whatever reason, I think we've been better in the Champions League and cup competitions generally. So, and that's a Chelsea thing again in most recent times. So I can pretty much expect us to turn up for this game, it being away, and I expect us to get a victory under our belt.
I also expect a bit of squad rotation, maybe Kepa playing. I don't know if some of the youngsters will get a chance, but maybe Chalobah, you're right. Chalobah will play Fofana maybe because he's been out for Leicester for a few weeks, so he'll have some fresh legs to run down. Thiago Silva might get a rest. Mount might start having come off the bench. Ben Chilwell as well, obviously. Broya will get a start, in my opinion. Hakim Ziyech might also go in. So there's a lot of changes that will happen for Chelsea, but as a fan, I just want to see progressive football. I just want to see fluidity in the football, and a 1-0 win is also a great win, obviously, for me, because it's still not the round of 16s or the round of 8s where the ties matter and the away goals matter, or actually the scrap that are away goals now, but where going into the opposition's stadium and scoring more than the opposition to try and get as much as you can back home and get that tie victory over the span of 2 games. But just go in there, do their thing, and yeah, obviously transfer window's closed, but just before we end it, we forgot about the main part of the West Ham game, the controversy that's starting again, and obviously Chelsea being in the media, and I know a lot of people say, why don't Chelsea legends speak on matters like these, and why there's always pundits like Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher from Liverpool, Man United, Man City's pundits as well are coming in and supporting them publicly, and Chelsea, no one speaks up. It's because there's an agenda against Chelsea. Well, the big news, that decision that went, I guess, in favor of Chelsea, one VAR decision. I think it's like 100 against us, 1, and now suddenly they want to overhaul VAR, change it. VAR is the worst thing that's ever existed in football. Suddenly we don't need VAR. There's 3 referees on the pitch that can decide a decision. Ankit, your quick thoughts on that just before we end it, and then a score prediction.
You know what? As in, see, I 100% agree. I'm not going to lie here. I'll admit that Mendy acted. Yes, probably again, even that fact, David Moyes saying this scandalous, and scandalous is a very strong word to say, and not being actually penalized for that, and that's double standards in itself. But anyway, let's not go there. Yes, he did act. He did act, and also going to admit that the best players in the world, and again, Neymar, for example, just putting it out there, everyone does. And when it happens to a goalkeeper, the goalkeeper would do even more so. Trust me, if it happened to Fabianski, he would have done exactly the same thing. Trust me on that. Okay, but technically, if you see, again, technically, yes, you can argue that Bowen just kind of touched him and it was more like a follow through at best. And then probably he utilized the most out of it. But technically, again, he did touch him. So by the letter of law, it is basically a foul. But again, I understand the fact that it went to VAR and then overturning it. Was it enough? Probably not. And that is where I agree to the fact that yes, Chelsea have got the lucky side of it, but it wasn't like a clear cut. It was a very unlucky fact. It wasn't as bad as what it was made out to be, in my opinion, because as I said, technically it was still a foul, but he made more of it out of it. Just like, for example, a same attacker would do with a penalty. But would you change that, overturn that? That's the biggest question mark, and that is why you can talk about VR. But why now? Why now? Why didn't you actually think of it when Kukurea had his hair pulled? You admitted that was a mistake, right? Still, you don't do anything about it, and now all of a sudden you bring this panel against Chelsea and change the rules, and of course everyone in the media talking about it as though we've got every lucky as in kind of decision towards ourselves, but no. See, on the other hand, I would rather not think about the decision. Yes, it's important from West Ham's point of view, but from our point of view, our defense was a shambles even in that moment, and that is more concerning to me than otherwise, because we know that as a Chelsea fan, like be it whatever, as in we don't have that backing when it comes to the media, be it the panel in the media not being there from Chelsea, or if they're there, I know a couple, without naming them, I know that a couple of them did get hated at Chelsea. That's why they give the hit back. But again, let's not go there. The fact is, like, we got to look at ourselves. we've got to improve. Why get into a situation where we depend on decisions like this? That's all I would
Yep,
say.
I completely agree with you. We don't, yeah. If we play great football, we wouldn't have to worry about things like these. You can say that the football isn't as good as it should be. But Ankit, just before we close off this discussion, this amazing discussion that we've had, your quick score predictions for Zagreb, and who are your goal scorers, if any?
Okay, if any, the interesting part. But yeah, Alan will surely come on. And Zagreb, you know what? I really feel that if Broya has to make big in this team, and this is the month for him before Aubameyang gets in. I trust you. Like, I not that
Yep.
Aubameyang is Lewandowski, but he'll get you goals, like Tuchel said,
Yep.
despite taking number 9. But yeah, Broya will be a goal scorer for sure. I'm getting that, Broya looks sharper and sharper, and he'll get one. And I do see us conceding yet again, unfortunately, because of experimenting a bit too much, which we may do. And again, there might be a winner, a late winner, and I'm assuming finally, with Broya being there, Pulisic is played in the right position. He comes on as a sub and he gets the winner for us. So it'll be close. Won't be so easy. It's an away game. It's a Zagreb, but I'll take a 2-1 victory any day.
2-1. Yeah, honestly, I'll take 1-0 as well. As long as, and honestly, if it's Kepa in goal and a clean sheet, that would be somewhat of an impressive performance, especially if we have some changes in defense as well. But yeah, that is it for tonight's preview and the review of the last game against West Ham. Obviously, Zagreb coming up, as well as a few big games coming up for Chelsea. The perfect time to kind of come back up. Obviously, we've got Fulham after that Zagreb game on the weekend, and then the Champions League game in the midweek as well, followed by the big game against Liverpool. That is something that's going to be a big one for Chelsea to close off September before the international break begins. Ankit, thank you very much for being on the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on. Make sure to follow Ankit's social media pages as well as all of his channels. I'll link everything below in the description for you guys to follow. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, then make sure to subscribe. Honestly, it really helps us, grow, and really helps all of us in the community grow together at the same time. So make sure you do that. Leave a like rating and follow us on Spotify and all of our audio platforms if you're listening on there, and add us to your playlist to get weekly updates whenever we upload. Thank you very much, Ankit, once again. We'll see you hopefully soon on the channel again, and really appreciate you coming on this late and after such a heavy defeat in the cricket perspective. So for those of you who want to watch some cricket content, make sure to follow the Cricket Time podcast, which will also be linked in the description below. Until then, stay safe. Up the Chels.